They hadn't even spent 18 months in their brand new home before the retention wall on Bennett and Cassie Thurgood's Ogden property failed. As the couple told KSL in 2017, the home's foundation was quite literally tearing apart and was in danger of sliding down the mountain.
Yeah, we had the land surveyed, the soil tested. We relied on the city to inspect it.
We did do our due diligence, and now we're here.
That was then when, fearing for their safety, the family moved out.
I can't come up here. It brings a lot of anxiety to me.
Before their home was built in 2014, state law required general contractors to have 4 years of paid experience and pass a comprehensive trade exam to obtain a license from the Utah Division of Occupational and Professional Licensing, or DOPL. But in recent years, those requirements were slashed.
The elimination of the trade exam was this last session in 2019.
DOPL Director Mark Steinagel says at a time when Utah needs more contractors, lawmakers were committed to getting consumers the services they needed as fast as possible. Hence the goal: make it easier for people to become licensed contractors.
Keep the stuff that actually protects and get rid of the stuff that is just a barrier to entry.
And if you've ever wanted to be a general contractor, all it takes now is 2 years working full-time in construction, a combined 30 hours of classroom time, and 2 exams.
There's a lot that goes into this business that 30 hours will not cut it, period.
5 yards will be here at noon.
James McBride has been in the business for nearly 30 years in Utah.
They only poured it at 4 inches.
This was his life's plan from the get-go.
I started out just as a laborer, and then I ended up being a superintendent relatively fast and just moved my way up through,
McBride became a general contractor when licensing requirements were some of the most stringent in Utah history. He says he wouldn't want to get in now.
What'll happen is you're going to get an influx of people that don't know what they're doing, that think they can run a construction company, and liens and lawsuits are going to skyrocket over the next couple of years.
Construction issues like the Thurgoods were already happening when state law was more strict. Now that it's easier to get a contractor's license,
It's going to be the wild, wild west is what it'll be. Not good.
It's still a license.
Hooper Representative Mike Schultz has sponsored much of the construction-related legislation the past 4 years.
I guess the fear is
A bill he sponsored and that was passed unanimously by the Utah legislature slashed license requirements for contractors.
All the trade exam was, I believe, was a way to kind of keep people out of the industry and make it hard, because it was a hard test.
Schultz says it's always been about promoting a free market.
well, now you can just get anybody
Yeah.
to come in, and what does that mean? Oftentimes shoddy construction work.
Yeah.
So what do you say to those people?
Well, I would say I don't think government should be in the business of picking winners and losers. I think that ought to be the consumer.
But what happens when the consumer becomes the biggest loser? Well, Schultz says that's where DOPL steps
And
in.
if it is a continued problem, obviously with complaints that are filed, then the division can take that license away.
So we checked and discovered revoking contractor licenses doesn't happen as often as you might expect. DOPL told KSL investigators of the more than 1,300 complaints received for contractors statewide so far this year, 676 resulted in discipline. 19% of those contractors disciplined had their license revoked. But 1/3 of those contractors were still allowed to practice since there was a stay on the discipline, begging the question, does DOPL's enforcement really deter bad practices? Representative Schultz also happens to be a contractor, one whom DOPL disciplined individually once in 2003 for hiring an unlicensed contractor to do work on a home. Schultz paid a $400 fine. 7 years later, his company was fined for a similar offense. That cost the builder $800. Schultz says in both circumstances, the cited contractors had a license when they were hired and lapsed during the jobs. Since he was elected, Schultz has sponsored or co-sponsored more than 20 bills related to construction or development. A number of those scaled back licensing requirements. His financial disclosures show 15% of his campaign contributions came from developers and real estate professionals.
I mean, do you think there's a conflict there that you accept money from this industry?
I'd make absolutely zero decisions based on who contributes to my campaign.
Schultz is also the owner of Castle Creek Homes, the company DOPL fined in 2010. Castle Creek built this house, the one with the failing foundation. Almost 3 years later, and after significant repairs, the Thurgood family has moved back in. They sued Schultz, his company, and the company that built the retaining wall after the family's insurance denied their claim, alleging in their filing that Castle Creek Homes negligently built despite numerous warnings not to do so. Castle Creek denied the allegations and countersued the Thurgoods, saying they waived any warranty on the home in favor of a reduced fee that the Thurgoods then never paid.
Ultimately that lawsuit was settled, and I can't talk about the specifics.
That's because both parties signed non-disclosure agreements, but Schultz maintains his company wasn't to blame.
We didn't hire that contractor that did the retaining wall. When attorneys get involved, they like to go after everybody.
Although the homeowners couldn't talk to us, their complaint alleges hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. A costly, time-consuming ordeal.
I mean, is there a concern that maybe your constituents aren't being protected by some of this?
That's what forces bad contractors out, is when there's more competition and people go with the good contractors.
As for McBride, he's not buying it.
There's nothing wrong with competition, but when it's competition that has no knowledge of what they're really doing, that's bad for business. And it's ultimately bad for the consumer.
Utah is building faster than any other state, building homes at 3 times the national average. Add in a major construction project like the new airport, and finding a good contractor for your home can be difficult.
Tonight, Brittany Glass continues our KSL Investigates a Building Problem series, this time focused on new laws.
Lots of new laws have loosened the reins on building in Utah. Several of the people authoring those laws work in construction and development. It can be a benefit of a citizen legislature, each bringing their own expertise to Utah's laws. But at what point does self-interest ripen into self-benefit?
House Bill 142, Building Construction Amendments.
Building is booming in Utah.
And we can't get workers coming into our program.
And as our population expands, laws are evolving with differing opinions on how to keep up with building demands.
And frankly, the builders and developers in the state have not been able to deliver enough units to satisfy that demand.
Bill Perry and his family have been building homes in Utah for decades.
Right now, the construction industry lacks laborers. There just simply are not enough.
He says building has become more expensive than ever, and regulation has to keep that in mind.
And so I think there's a balance that has to be struck.
The biggest investment homeowners make is what? Buying a home. And in Utah, they're getting screwed.
But contractor Sean Gores with Gores Construction says the Utah legislature's attempts to roll back regulation actually means bigger problems for consumers.
The system in Utah is not built to protect the consumer, the homeowner. To the contrary, it's built to protect the contractors and developers.
Received 68 yea votes, 0 nay votes, passes the House.
In some cases, contractors and developers are the ones creating these laws. Can you guess who they are? Of the 104 members serving in Utah's legislature, 31 have some kind of tie to construction, real estate, or development. Clear out those who have a rental house or two or aren't directly or significantly impacted by these trades, and here we are. 8 legislators who take paychecks directly from some aspect of the construction industry. 4 of them are or work directly with home builders. People like Representative Paul Ray, CEO of the Northern Wasatch Home Builders Association. Representative Brad Wilson, the CEO of Destination Homes and owner of multiple development companies. Senator J. Stewart Adams, who owns multiple development and construction companies. And Representative Mike Schultz, owner of Castle Creek Homes. In the past 4 years, the Utah legislature has put forth nearly 50 bills relating to real estate, development, and construction. 35 of those are now law. 79% were passed unanimously.
The KSL investigators read each bill and broke them down into ones that are clearly on the side of the consumer, clearly benefit developers and the construction industry, and ones that are in that gray area. Here's what we found.
About 46% of bills helped consumers. The bulk of pro-consumer bills had to do with updated building codes, fire code, and safety. Senator Karen Main tended to be the champion of these bills.
So I have many pieces of legislation that's to have protection in the workplace. That's really core to me.
It's no surprise workplace safety is her priority. Main serves as president of the Utah AFL-CIO. the largest federation of labor unions in the country. She also tends to sponsor legislation that focuses on unions and workers. 31% of past bills ran on the other side of the spectrum, aiding developers and construction trades, making it easier to get licensed, decreasing penalties if contractors make mistakes, and streamlining plan approvals. The law now says if a city isn't moving fast enough for developers through the approval process, and by fast, we mean 14 to 21 days, they can just start building so long as the plans were certified by an architect or engineer. That legislation was penned in 2017 by Senator Kurt Bramble.
My fear, and I think a lot of constituents fear, that this need to get things going faster, to push through, allows for mistakes that could ultimately be to the detriment of the future homeowner.
Well, we have tort laws that address that. So if you're talking about protecting the homeowner, there's a whole host body of other laws that will protect the homeowner from slipshod work from a professional.
But how many years later and at what expense to the homeowner?
Every profession, you've got that, whether it's medical malpractice, legal law practice, accounting malpractice, every profession you've got that.
The remaining 23% of laws fall into that gray area. These tend to deal with land use and how certain funds are spent. As we examined the bills produced, we noticed one person sponsored far more bills than any other, Representative Mike Schultz. His name is listed as sponsor or co-sponsor on 20 of the 49 bills, 12 more than the next legislator. He's the owner of Castle Creek Homes, and more than 16% of his donations come from the construction and development industries.
To anyone who would say that you shouldn't be introducing legislation that relates to your field.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's the whole design of the citizen legislature, right? I certainly know a lot more about the field than a lot of other people. There's all the disclosures. People can make up their own mind on what they think.
Conflict of interest disclosures are required of every state lawmaker. Legislators can run or vote on any bill that may personally benefit them, so long as they disclose the conflict. Schultz's opinion on the benefits of a citizen legislature was similar to many legislators we spoke with. Several praised the individual expertise each lawmaker brings to the table, including Paul Ray, whose contributions from construction trades and real estate make up about 13% of his campaign income. His state association, the Home Builders Association of Utah, was also selected as one of Utah's approved providers of the contractor licensing class and exam.
I didn't write the bill, I voted on the bill. But it's the state HBA that actually is over the contractors class, not the local HBAs.
Ray has only sponsored or co-sponsored 2 pieces of legislation related to his profession in the last 4 years. Both we deemed helped construction trades.
My focus has been in those areas where I have more expertise in than the building industry. So yeah, not a priority to me. There's people that are much better qualified to understand the industry better than I am.
All lawmakers are governed by the Ethics Commission, which has only received 1 ethics complaint in the last 7 years. And if the public has issues with how a legislator is voting, they can make that clear at the ballot box. We did a lot of research on this topic. If you'd like to see donor lists for those 8 legislators and the 49 bills we reference, click on this story at ksltv.com.
Yeah, fascinating information over the last couple of days. Thanks, Brittany.
I want a bigger shower.
Victor and Hannah Sine are looking for someone to remodel the master bath in their Layton home. In a matter of months, it's where they hope to deliver their first baby.
Everything is just so narrow and tight.
They know to do their homework, checking online reviews, the Better Business Bureau, and former customers.
Word by mouth referrals saying they did a great job. We've used them for years, and I know that we've had no issues with them.
But when I asked them if the Doppel database was part of their research,
I have never seen this before.
So I had them poke around the Doppel website. Victor had received a couple recommendations for contractors. But when he searches the Doppel database to see if they were licensed,
nothing's popping up for them. So I don't really know how to use my resources to find a contractor, at least through Doppel.
This time, I had him put in the name of a contractor I knew was licensed.
JM Management. Okay, let's try again.
But the database wouldn't bring up the contractor unless Victor knew exactly how the business spelled its name, spaces and all.
It's like early 2000s, like 90s, when like you had to type in exactly what you're looking for.
Even Hannah, who's a licensed midwife and familiar with Doppel, struggled.
We still couldn't find a contractor through the website.
Doppel is also responsible for disciplining contractors when they break the rules. This ranges from citations all the way to referring criminal charges to the Utah Attorney General. But as I found, consumers don't have access to a lot of that information. Some things you can't search for on the Doppel database: any complaints made about license holders. Those aren't considered public information under Utah law. And any citations? You can't find them here under a license holder's file, whether it's a company or someone's name. Instead, you have to click through monthly discipline newsletters to see if your contractor was cited, and that information isn't searchable. Plus, we found some huge discrepancies in Doppel's data. According to the division, it disciplined 676 contractors in 2019, as of October. But when we went through the monthly disciplinary newsletters, we only found 189. So what happened to the missing 72% of disciplined contractors? When I took all this to Doppel, they didn't want to do an on-camera interview. In a statement, they told us they've requested that the vendor who manages the database make changes so citations are searchable. Well, what about what Victor described as the 90s search engine? Doppel didn't say anything about any updates, only that consumers would need to know how the company spelled its name way back when they registered.
Probably not.
As for Victor and Hannah, they're sticking with referrals and reviews.
It's definitely not the best resource.
This is what we took off this morning out from the back elevation. You can see it's just completely saturated, and it weighs a lot because of all the moisture in it.
Sean Gores has seen his fair share of construction defects. He owns Gores Construction, a repair contractor that specializes in fixing water intrusion problems across the Intermountain West.
We're pretty much considered the doctors of the construction industry. When things are broken, we come out and fix it.
Gores says Utah is a hotbed for business.
It's probably, out of all the states I work on, it's the worst state I've seen for construction.
And he should know. Gores has been fixing damage in multiple states for 20 plus years. The past 5 years, though, he spent a lot of time working in Daybreak. KSL's been covering the issue there extensively.
There were starting to be construction issues. Roofs were starting to leak. There was a lack of insulation.
You can see it falling apart down here. This is the original construction piece here.
Everything was flaking off. This is flaking off. There's water behind here.
And the problem isn't limited to the valley either.
I'm going to show you one picture that we just got from a job up in Park City on a very, very, very high-end home.
Gores says there's a simple explanation.
The developers and contractors were more budget-driven and schedule-driven than they were quality-driven. They're not qualified to do the work. They're not being trained to do the work.
Construction 101, a prereq Gores says Utah doesn't seem to offer.
Contractors just got there and build it as quickly as they can, and there's a lot of things that are missed. My job as general contractor is to make sure that we build things correctly and per code.
The building code has gotten nothing but stricter, and the cities and the municipalities are inspecting what it is that we build.
Bill Perry Jr.'s family has built homes in Utah for decades. Perry says there are other factors at play, including the state's housing shortage and an affordability crisis.
Those affordability problems are exacerbated primarily by the fact that there's not enough labor.
But at what expense to the home buyer?
You know, I'm not going to sit here and say that there's not instances where builders make mistakes or quality is sacrificed. I think anytime you have a shortage, there's always a possibility that some people in the supply chain will cut corners.
Perry says builders need to strike a balance.
We have to do the best we can to try and deliver as soon as we can, but at the same time deliver quality.
As for homeowners stuck in the middle,
I want whatever damage is done to my home repaired.
You can imagine the heartbreak the homeowners have.
they're often stuck footing the bill to fix those costly construction mistakes.